Okay, I call the meeting to order. And the first order of, thank you all that have come here tonight. But let's just go through the agenda a bit. First of all, the approval of the minutes of July 24th, 2025, which was out in the parking lot at the Pawtucket Neighborhood Center, if you remember. So thankfully, it was open tonight, but any comments? I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
Hearing nothing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Okay, so what I'd like to do is dispense with the two continuing discussion, continued discussion items, and just get right to the point of the meeting. We have our guests here tonight who are the candidates for the Board of Selectmen, and we'd like to welcome you here. Thank you for running. Thank you for your participation. We've tried not to make this a political process, but we want your input, and if you have questions or anything like that, I sent you our whatever you call it, the enabling act or whatever when they appointed us, and also I sent you our list of priorities. So we've been meeting since May really, and going through a lot of the points, and now we're going to be faced with a whole new board, and so that's a good thing, and we want to continue our work, but we want to work with you too. So that said, Brian, I know you had some you had some comments, some pointed comments about planning and zoning.
Yeah, and this is not about any specific zoning regulations or anything of that sort. This is about the overall process. Because right now, I mean, zoning affects everything in town, the density of residents, what industries can go whether farming can happen in certain locations, that sort of thing. Has a huge effect on life. Zoning board's been pretty good in my personal experience, but I know they were considering looking at regulating short-term rentals at one point through zoning. So it's the sort of board that can really, by itself, do just about anything. And there is no check or balance on it currently. And from state law, it says, town meeting may not amend or repeal regulations duly made by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Once a municipality has established a zoning commission, it cannot regulate its actions except as expressly provided in its municipal charter, which is why I bring it to your attention. And the only thing I would ask is that when we're looking at whatever regulations there may be, that the legislative body of the town, which is town meeting, get an up or down vote on it. And it could only be a single sentence in here that says something like any change to zoning maps, regulations, rules, has to be approved by town meeting. Well, that would be it. And because this can affect life rather dramatically in town in many different ways, it seems appropriate that the legislative body of the town have some minimal say in how we proceed.
I think it's a point well taken. Steve, do you have any comments?
I was going to ask, what's the statute that you were citing that?
You may have actually sent this to me indirectly. If you really know.
You read it in the paper.
Well, it was in the other newspaper here.
This was circled in the spring, and then I highlighted the part I just read. So
Okay.
how you read paragraphs and sections and such is.
Wonderful. I can keep this?
Yes.
Super, thank you.
I'd also just add, if there's any chance that this could happen in the November, approval of this could happen before or at the November election, we're coming up with a major zoning rewrite. I don't know when that's going to hit.
That's too
That's
late.
it.
Too late,
That's
yeah.
too late. Yeah,
We might
the
be done in
deadline,
August.
No.
Yeah, we had to get that done in
I thought I
August.
mentioned it.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So,
thank you, this is very helpful.
What was the section, Steve?
It's 22A-354N, lowercase n, no parenthetical.
listen, we're freewheeling here, so I'll take comments from whoever, whenever, just, I'll try to keep order, but I don't want silence, but I'm trying to spur things along. So anybody else want to add anything?
Can I just say something?
Please, go
To
right
add to
ahead.
your initial point.
Steve.
Thank you, sir. It's really important, the reason I think that we wanted to do this is we're in an unusual, I've done 30-plus charters around the state of Connecticut, and I've never had a situation where the appointing authority that appointed a commission is going to be gone. I always tell my commissions, keep in mind, you're independent, you have a lot of flexibility, but you always have to get it through the appointing authority. So I thought the important reason to have everybody in, all the candidates, was not, again, to end up in a partisan debate, but was to acquaint you with the fact that you're going to be coming in November, and we have a very short window after that. Our job is done in March. I think we have to report to you, to the Board of Selectmen, by March. And so if there are priorities that the selectmen have coming in, we just heard one, that might be a priority depending on who comes in and doesn't come in, that it's really important that everybody hit the ground running because the commission will not have a lot of time and we can't really extend it at that point. You can create a new commission if you want, but you can't extend it beyond that, and that'll go on the ballot for next November for the presidential, or the midterm elections. So I want to just emphasize that it's an unusual place to be. We all know that when you come into office, you're going to be setting up the wheels of government, but you have to understand that there's a statutory process that's going on, and so the commission may be calling on whoever wins to come back in here and decide if there's any priorities or there are other things you want to change in the charter, because that'll be the window to do it. So.
And if you have any type of comments or anything, any thoughts as time goes on, you have my email and you can get that to me and just let me know what those priorities might be. I mean, some of the things that we're looking at is eliminating some of the redundancies within the charter. The other stuff that we're looking at is trying to define those boards and commissions that need to be well defined, but keeping the charter as open and as flexible as possible, so that we don't have to necessarily make charter revisions as we go along. But this is something that's good to revisit at least every 10 years, and that's one of the things that I wanted to do, put something in the charter about there should be a charter revision commission at least every 10 years to make sure we, if there's any way we can improve on government, that's when we should do it. We've had a few in the last, prior to this, I think our last charter revision was in 2017, I think. And so, I mean, it hasn't been 10 years, but there's been some issues like what we dealt with last year was the making the town clerk's position a hired position, which I think was, and it went to vote, and I think the voters got it right, the electorate got it right. So we're dealing with some people who, whether we work here in a vacuum, we've been fortunate enough to have plenty of input with Mr. Tamsky showing up, all the other select people showing up. We've really had it's been an open forum. We've tried to make it as open as possible. One of the issues that we may visit is term limits. I don't know if that's something that we're going to face in this election, if that's an issue we're going to face in this election, but that's one of the issues we've been looking at. So if you have any thoughts, we'd appreciate it. If you, we appreciate your support when you all get elected, and unfortunately, just 3 of you are going to get elected. So, so there you go. That's where we have it. Go ahead.
Well, the only other issue, which is important to me, was the structure of our government as far as departments. And having worked in the office, there's some key directors that we want to keep in the charter. I think it's important to have that structure, because any government that changes, you still want to have the stability of the town operating. And I think, our Director of Finance, Administration, Assessment, Planning, there were various departments that were sort of key to the operation, and I think those are important to keep in the charter so that they're not changed and people are moved around or removed. Now, you have legislation that if a particular position was eliminated, then it would be eliminated from the charter, so that's a moot point. But I think having certain major positions and then, and as it goes down, if we move, we're also looking at certain departments, you know, where do we put the town clerk, where do you put the tax collector and such, because they were not necessarily initially in a union, but we also have people that have been in unions, and once they come out of the union, if they became a director, they would come out of a union. So you're now working with unions. And we try to want to make those things that would be as easy as possible and not disruptive, I think, to the municipality, and I think these are really important. I know, having been in a position where having a certain selectman, they could say, all right, we're only going to have directors at meetings, we're going to eliminate the rest of the people. So if you're not in that key position, you don't know what's happening. And it puts you in a difficult position. So if you're part of that, they have to include all the directors. So it sort of safeguards the major departments that are functioning, that are operating the town. So those are rather important, and how you feel about that, I think, is going to be an important issue too when we go forward.
We've been fortunate to have some very experienced people and thoughtful people too. For example, Marcia and Patty, who were involved in the town government for a long time, so they bring a great deal of wisdom in how we can make things, tweak things if we have to, and make things better, run better, and that's been a great thing. We also have a vacancy which we're sort of looking to fill. If you know of anybody who's interested, I mean, they should send a letter into to the select board, so we can perhaps fill that vacancy. We don't
If
have.
you knew Lynn Young, she was on our board and
Yeah, she was on it.
stepped off.
Yeah. So it's a bit of that's, Lynn provided a lot of insight also, so there you have it.
Mike Feuerbach might be a good one. You know Mike?
I do know
Yeah.
Mike. I saw him the other day.
So talk to him.
I will.
Is he still on, is he
Yes,
still
he's
on
got
Board of
one more.
Finance?
Yeah, until November.
He terms out?
Yep.
Okay, so there you go. So
Yep.
he may be, if he's interested, tell him. I've talked to a couple of people too, but the next step, I guess, is getting them to send in a letter, which is not, I'd like to be able to just pick somebody out, but it's not our choice. So there you go. Any other comments? I'm rambling here, guys.
No, it's-
Rambling to fill the dead air.
It's helpful for us to understand what you guys have been going through and what you're doing and how it all is playing out. So
Yeah.
it's very helpful to hear all this.
How's the campaign going? Are there any public forums or anything that is gonna happen?
I think we're just starting to schedule some of those now. I've had a couple of inquiries, I know Rob has as well, so start putting those together
Yeah.
pretty soon.
Good.
We're still, almost 6 weeks out, so.
But you guys got your signs up.
I just saw signs for the
Yeah.
first time. There was none in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I drove here, I'm like, there's signs up now.
Katie Quinlan has a lot.
Yeah, there were no signs anywhere in my neighborhood. I'm like, where are the
But
signs?
technically, we're
been-
not supposed to put them up until
Yeah,
October.
I've been out of the political process for a while, and
I was in Old Saybrook and they got signs crazy down
Yeah.
there.
At some point it becomes, yeah. I digress.
State property.
That's it. Well, that's what I'm doing too, digressing by asking you how the campaign is going. So there you go.
Hey, Steve, can you share a little more about some of your thoughts on how we kind of simplify the structure for departments and boards and commissions? Because
Yeah.
you have some good ideas about
Yeah.
how we might do it. It might be helpful to
Yeah.
share that.
One of the things we actually did, if you look at the varicose vein that we just published in the day in Salem, I just finished the Salem charter. It's on the ballot this year. You'll see why I called it that. The
It costs $12,000.
$12,000.
You have to put it in paper.
I can't even read that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things that we did there is we moved, they did something a little different. They hadn't done a charter revision since 2004, and they have a very nice charter. It's a small town with a very nice charter. I told them that right from the beginning, but it was a little disorganized, there were a lot of redundancies in it. But the most glaring problem with their charter, and you're not quite there, is that they actually listed all the positions, I'm not talking about the elected positions, but all of the employee positions in their charter. And I said, well, you can't change them. If it's in the charter, it's in the charter. And so what we did is we moved to a functional standard to basically say that what you need to have are functions. And to even delineate the departments is something that you don't really need to do, as long as you lay out the functions. Now, there's some things that you may want to keep in your charter, you know, if there's a police department or the fire department, or you have the police chief or the fire chief as important positions that you want to specify. Although some communities are moving away from that because no one's had the chutzpah, shall we say, or the guts to actually do it. But some communities have talked about moving in the direction of having a protective services department where you have police and fire combined under one chief, under one administrative director, maybe have somebody in each of the disciplines as the actual day-to-day operator, but you have one person who runs it, and it allows for some cross-pollination, across some things that you can do that you can't do if you have these separate departments. You have collective bargaining agreements to deal with and all that, but the objective is to allow for flexibility, so you require the functions have to be performed. And what I usually have in these charters is and I'm going through this actually in New Haven right now. We're finally getting around to getting rid of all the departments from the charter. The Corporation Counsel, the city attorney, the town attorney has to sign off and say that once something moves from the charter to the Code of Ordinances, has to be approved by the town meeting, that the functions are being met, and therefore you can get rid of the departments. So you don't eliminate the departments in the charter. You put them in a kind of a sunset chapter at the back of the charter, and when the town meeting, with the approval of the town attorney, approve the replacement ordinances, and that section of the charter just goes away. But the functions remain in the body of the charter, unless you want to change the functions. You don't want to have a police department. Whatever, there are some people who advocate for those positions, but not too many, but you do have some. And so that's the way you can go with that, and the commission's given some thought to that. And so it's something you should be thinking about before you put the hand on the Bible and come back and talk to the commission about it. So that'll be an important thing from the point of you as the managers, as the executive entity of the town, to feel that is comfortable, because if you're not comfortable with it, then that will be a political problem next November if the commission goes in one direction, and you can reject it. Can I just explain the process to them? Because they're all going to be, they're going to have to deal with this. The way the charter process works, we're deep into it at this point. This is the second phase of their charter revision. Most of these people were on a commission that made some changes that the voters approved a year ago in November. This is the second phase, because we decided to split it up, and that's why they started in May. Normally they would start earlier, but we're going into the next cycle. So when they issue their report in March, the report goes to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen will then have up to 60 days to review the charter. They have to deliberate and look at the work the commission's doing, and they then have to have a public hearing within 45 days, then they have to act within 15 days of the 45 days. That's why I say up to 60 days. Most of my towns don't use the full 60 days. During that period of time, you analyze it, you make determinations about whether what they're doing is sound, whether it's sensible, or whether it's not. You then have the ability to make recommendations to them. The current selectmen gave some sense of what it is that they wanted to do, but because of the situation we have at the calendar, we're going to have a new board that has to make the final decisions on what the commission's, what work of the commission will go before the voters. You can raise new things. So if there are things that occur to you after you take office that you are not thinking about right now, that's your time to raise those issues. It then goes back to the commission. The commission would then have 30 days to look at your recommendations, during that period of time, I always recommend strongly kind of a collaborative meeting process where the Board of Selectmen, First Selectmen, members of the Board of Selectmen would be at these meetings, going back and forth to minimize any mistakes. They didn't hear you, they didn't read it properly, they didn't understand it, and you have a chance to mediate the proposal that you made and the response that they will give. And the hope would be that they come back with a product that you could ultimately approve. They can't raise anything new in that process. They can only respond to your 5 recommendations. I have one legislative body come back, or one appointing authority come back with like 40 recommendations, which is insane, but that happened. We got through it and worked it out, mediated it all, and got it worked out. And so then when it comes back to you, as the Board of Selectmen, you then have to go up or down on the proposals. That's why it's important to mediate, because there's nothing you can do in that process to amend anything. You can only vote the proposals down at that moment. With the exception of errata, mistakes, and things like that, you can fix those things. But you can't substitute something at that point because you just got a great idea. Yes, sir.
Question for, I was on a charter revision commission here in town over 20 years ago, and I think we came up with, it's been so long, I don't recall exactly, maybe 7 recommendations.
Yeah.
And the issue was whether or not the Board of Selectmen could pick and choose or had to take the entire set as a set. That is, could they go forward to the voters with 3 of the 7 that we put forward, or did they have to pick all? And you kept, as you were speaking, I was listening, you referred to it as if it's one comprehensive.
No. So you will make your recommendations to them for their final report. The report they will provide you in March is an interim draft report. Could be final, because you have the option to approve it. And if you approve it in March or April, after you get it, it's done. But if you have recommendations, you can come back with a series of recommendations, and I'll explain the split in a moment. They come back with the recommendations, presumably, let's assume everything works out well, and you accept all their responses because it's all been mediated, all been worked out in that process. Then the question for you is, how do you divide it up for the voters on the ballot? Do you want one question or do you want multiple questions? That's the question, and that's not their decision, that is your decision. That is a Board of Selectmen decision. And if there's nothing controversial, I usually recommend do one question. Make it simple and not complicate things. If there are controversial, we had 4 questions, I think, last year, because we were talking about eliminating offices and stuff like that, and wanted to give the voters a fair shot at making their determinations. And I found the process here very thoughtful. Some things prevailed and others did not prevail, and it was a very thoughtful process. So you will make the decision on, and I'll presumably, if everything works out, we'll be working with you on developing that process, and you'll determine at that point whether or not you need a separate question for any of the issues that you resolve.
Thanks.
If something fails, can it, then it's over, or can it be brought back again?
Fails where? The voters?
Yeah.
You can do another charter revision the next year if you want.
Okay, all right. So
Even with the
follow
10-year
that.
requirement that the chair was talking about, the Board of Selectmen can create a charter commission
Just
every
keep
year
going.
if they want
Okay,
to.
okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious about that.
It would be up to the Board of Selectmen to appoint a new commission if they so chose.
So that would have to dissolve, you'd have to dissolve the
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
They dissolve with the final report. When you act on their final report, they're out of business. They're
Oh, okay.
gone. Yeah, they're gone.
Interesting.
I want to add too, because I think the process that we went through the last time around was a fairly collaborative process.
Absolutely.
We had a meeting with, we met several times with the board and conferenced some of the issues, so I think that worked. I mean, we're trying to be as productive as possible. That's, I think, what we're doing.
And the reason for this is that we have a short window after you take office, and we thought it was really critical to get a sense of if there are any major priorities. The zoning issue is a big issue. It's an important issue. Any other priorities, and I just would second what the chair said. If you have any thoughts and ideas, get them into him during this process so that in November, we can hit the ground running. And whoever wins should be thinking about that in terms of what are those things that you need to do between now and have them do between now and March. You do have the second bite at the apple with the recommendation phase. So if there's something, if you don't think about it before they get the draft report out, so I don't want you to think you're at the end of the line at that point. You do have an ability during that phase, but keep in mind, it's very short, and they only have 30 days. So if it's a complicated issue, and I can't imagine what it would be, that they couldn't resolve in that 30-day period, you just have 30 days. So if you give them 50 items, you're not going to get that done in 30 days. But if you're dealing with 5 items, 6 items, 10 items, that's very doable. That's very workable. But you'll have to collaborate and work very closely with them during that period of time. And that is during budget season. I just want to point out for the record, my experience is that budget season sometimes becomes a distraction, so, and it'll be your first budget, so, you know, so.
Some of you have been through that.
I'm sure you're all veterans.
I know the two
you
of you.
Yeah, so.
A question, a lot of these items on here are sort of kind of language cleanup, that kind of thing. Has there been any discussion or thought or, you know, what the history has been of sort of bigger questions? I know you talked about continuity. People in the past have suggested maybe the selectman's term should be 4 instead of 2 years because it can be somewhat disruptive to the staff. Or number of selectmen, just really sort of big structural things like that. Have there been any thoughts on that at all, or has that been brought up at all?
So if you're talking about going to if you're talking about investigating whether we should go to some other type of form of government other than a select person form of government, or like a town manager form of government, or if you're talking along those lines, if you're talking about expanding the board of selectmen from 3 to 5 people, we have discussed that. We've been very contemplative about it, and we come from we all bring certain experiences to the table that some people might not have. For example, I was born and brought up in Westerly, and I remember when they went to a town manager form of government, and I remember the hell that they went through to go to a town manager form of government. I also remember, and I also know, although it seems like they've worked through some of those issues, they still have some problems. There's still a politicized process, which is kind of bothersome because it's not necessarily something that should be. There shouldn't be battles if you have a town administrator that way. So we've looked at that. We've come to the conclusion, or we've come to a conclusion that the way things work in Stonington right now are pretty good. And if you and one of the beautiful things about the way things work in Stonington is you have only 3 selectmen, and so it becomes it's a lot easier to deal with than having 5. All right, it's much more efficient.
And the one item that went down was we were going to have the first selectman's term a longer period, and that's what went down. Because you had the other 2 selectmen, so you still had a majority possibly that could override that, but it was to extend so the first selectman had more time to carry out their objectives, but that was not successful.
It's interesting because in Salem, again, it's a small town, the Board of Selectmen has a 4-year term, the first selectman has a 2-year term. It's quite interesting that the chief executive has a 2-year term, and they did nothing about that. It was just historically the way they did it. If I may, Mr. Chair, we discussed this a year in the last charter process, but I've recently come across the only problem with a 3-member body, the selectmen may add some things to that, is a FOIA problem. You can barely have a conversation between 2 members of the body without having a FOIA violation. And that is a practical issue, it's a trap, and it's a practical issue for members of a board if you want to have a conversation between 2 members. Is that a meeting? And that's something I will tell you if you get elected to be, just to carefully travel that road and talk to your town attorney and make sure you don't violate the law and have an illegal meeting where a decision gets made. If there's a chance encounter at the restaurant, okay, there's a chance encounter, but even having a telephone conversation could pose a problem under the way FOIA gets interpreted. And is that an impediment to the operation of government? I have not, I don't know the answer to that, but I have that problem right now with the pension commission. In one of my communities, I represent the treasurer in the pension commission. It's an independently elected treasurer. It's the city of Hartford, and they have a 3-member pension commission, and they're very frustrated because they can't have sidebar conversations, because every sidebar conversation is a FOIA violation for 2 of them to talk. Now, the 3 of them can go into executive session where it's appropriate, but that's not to discuss how to get something through. That's to discuss things that are appropriate for executive session. There's a very clear statutory construct for how to go into executive session. A lot of people abuse it, but I'm not recommending that. So that's the one argument in favor of a larger body, so you can have more collaborative discussions on the side, because the 3-member body poses that very distinct problem.
I didn't have the thought of that. We didn't have that discussion.
Yeah, I don't think we did.
We did not, and it's it interests me that you bring it up. Ben, did you have something to say?
That's exactly what I tried to bring up during the last conference, is the fact that with a 3-member board, particularly when there are 3 separate parties, there's nobody to talk to on the board.
It's a lonely job, and people are out there gunning for you, huh?
But you have no idea how the others might feel about an issue that you may want to bring forward, but you don't want to waste a lot of time if you know that you're not going to have any support. But if you have a 5-member board and 2 of you can speak to each other, at least you can start to get some sense of whether some movement can be made on an issue. And with three individuals, people in the community, I talk to constituents all the time, and they're saying, well, how does Danielle feel about this? Or how does Deb Downey feel about this? And I say, I've never talked to them. I don't have their phone numbers. I've never had a private conversation with either of them.
Yeah.
Strange as it may seem, in 2 years.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
And, the conversation last year was along the lines of, you look at what they have over in Westerly, the seven people on the town council. That's no bed of
Well, I
roses.
don't think we compare us to Westfield.
Yeah.
I just think they have problems with a 7-member board, and I'm not suggesting a 7-member board, but perhaps a 5-member board would be. I can just see so many benefits of it.
If you're,
I don't, I think I mentioned last time that we talked about this, that really there aren't too many people in town that have been in the position of having been on the Board of Selectmen that have this experience. And everybody seems to have an idea of how things work on the Board of Selectmen, but you really don't know until you've been there, so.
Well, I think most people don't even know what FOIA is, so that's to your point.
Most towns-
The average person doesn't know FOIA.
When you know about it, you're going to know about it, though.
Well, the town has run classes on it, which have been quite good.
Yeah.
And they actually have a lot of those slides online that other
Yeah.
people review from time to time.
Years ago, I worked for the Office of Policy and Management, and we also dealt with the Institute of Public Service, and the Institute of Public Service was great with board selectmen. They put books together for selectmen and for mayors. They did all kinds of forms of government. Ed Dowling used to write papers on different types of government. And what you see, no matter what kind of government you have, if you get really good people, you never have a problem, no matter what form of government it is. And if you get someone who isn't good, they can cause all kinds of problems. And we've seen it in all kinds of cities. The state of Connecticut has bailed out Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, and because of finances. I remember going to the city of Bridgeport, and we were looking at their funds and checking things out, and they were taking boats that were sinking in the harbor for taxes. It was just this type of mentality, I guess. And once they brought people in, they cleaned up the government. They were back in the black, and they were operating, and they were monitored. So.
well, the best example of that is Waterbury. Waterbury was in very, very difficult straits at the turn of the century, and the Treasurer's Office, the Financial Review Board, came in and took it over and had the ability to remediate contracts. Because if you don't fix your collective bargaining agreements with that may have exorbitant overtime provisions and early retirements and pensions. That's particularly in fire and police. We talked about that a little earlier. It's really hard to get on the straight and narrow. In Waterbury, and we put some provisions. I happened to be doing a charter revision at that time, and worked very closely with the treasurer's office and with the board, and we put safeguards in the charter, because again, it is about the people. There's no doubt about it. But you also want to have provisions in your document that you can point to that would pose problems. Like one of the things we did in Waterbury, we created a group called the FARC, the Financial Review Commission, Financial Audit and Review Commission. The FARC is what they called it, and that was a body that had auditing authority, and also had a provision in the charter you could not reduce their budget. Now, what you could do is you could starve the beast. You know, over years you don't add to the budget. 10 years out, it begins to starve the beast. But it was meant to be an independent body. Now, of course, the mayors could appoint bad people to it, and the Board of Aldermen could approve the bad people for the body eventually. But that has not happened. And in the 20-plus years, Waterbury has done a pretty good job at keeping itself afloat. It's never going to be dramatic change because the cities have other issues and other problems, but structures are important, and that 3-member body, you know, is something to think about, because we just literally have come across it. Now, the other side of the coin, it does seem odd when Selectman Tamsky indicates that he never had a conversation with his colleagues outside of the context of the meeting. In one way, well, that's wonderful, because everybody's seeing everything live. But sometimes you need to have a discussion, a candid discussion with your colleagues. I served on a 30-member legislative body for 10 years, and I don't know how I would have operated if I could not talk to the people and start to build a coalition, try ideas out, lay out thoughts on how something could be structured. It just doesn't make, it's almost counterintuitive. So yeah, it takes away from some of the transparency of having everything decided at the table by the 3 of them for the first time having a discussion, but it takes away from building an issue that you really can't do in a 2-hour meeting or a 3-hour meeting. And so it might be something that we should look at and you should think about, and there's time to deal with that between November and March to think about that issue.
I've never appreciated the fact that it's a lonely position. Can you get around that by having executive sessions?
You can only do executive sessions if it fits into one of the categories
Yeah.
that the statute permits.
Interesting point.
Yeah, there's no executive session for collegial dialogue, you know. Yeah.
Hey, Bill, you had asked, one other area we're looking at that's a little more than cleanup language was disposition of town property.
Yep.
And right now, it's a clip level of $5,000 the Board of Selectmen can approve. And what were we thinking of, 25?
25, yeah.
Yeah, so we were thinking of raising that to 25,000, because anything over 5,000 has to go to a town meeting. The cost of a town meeting is probably $2,500 when you look at advertising in the paper, staffing it, doing everything you need to do. And so we talked about it, and with a budget of over $80 million, 5,000 is low.
Yeah.
So we are looking at changing that to probably $25,000 that the Board of Selectmen has the ability to approve. And Lynn Young was very supportive of that, being the Board of Finance fiscal conservative that she was.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've
Yeah.
discussed and
Yeah.
we've
Supported that.
it's sort of no brainer, it seems
Makes
like.
sense.
So. Listen, I appreciate this forum that we're having tonight, because it's a great discussion and stuff that really is. I think it's new, it's something that we haven't discussed before. So it's a great thing, and I don't want to cut things short, but I don't want to make things longer than. I don't want to just sit around here. So I'm all for wrapping up, but if anybody wants to say anything more,
Thank you for inviting us.
it's been a good discussion. I think it's been productive.
Thank you for all the work you've been doing.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate
Thanks, Ben.
that from you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. So,
Yeah, the other FOIA thing, just to keep in mind, it also applies to email, so you can't even email your select people. So if you send an email about anything other than maybe changing a meeting date or time, and you send an email, you've violated FOIA. You've created a meeting.
Yeah, you could be on a joint email to say that we're meeting at 7
Yeah,
o'clock
but
on
if you start
Tuesday.
getting
But you start getting,
any type of
yeah,
business, you've then violated FOIA.
yeah.
So that could become.
You created an illegal meeting by email.
And
I
so it
think,
could
I think
become
it's
a
through
big
text
issue.
messages too.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
oh, yeah.
For any
Right.
communication, right?
Yeah.
Right, that's crazy, that's crazy.
I've also heard of towns that have three, a body of three. If something happens and one goes away, you're now left with two and sort of in this state of gridlock.
Potentially. Fairfield just had that problem.
Right.
Literally. The first selectman died, and you then had one Democrat and one Republican, and the Republican, who I happen to know well, I represented her when she was first selected, was the former first selectwoman who the first selectman defeated. And so they had a gridlock. They finally resolved the gridlock, but they had an obscure provision in the charter that allows for a special election, which they're doing, going to be doing, but it was a real gridlock situation. That's the other thing that made me think about it more, and I just came across this problem with our pension commission in Hartford, where there's a lot of, I just met with the chair last week, and they're very frustrated that they don't have the ability to have a dialogue to build consensus on an issue. Now, that's more of a problem. It's a problem like you face. They have to do a charter revision because their pension commission is in the charter, and they would have to expand it by going to the charter process. And I don't think they're going to do it for just that purpose. But since we're here, it's an issue that you should think about.
Never ever thought of it that way. So,
And there's also, I think, very few other three-person bodies in town. Right?
Oh, and here,
This is five, right?
well,
Board of Finance, yeah.
I see the wisdom, I see the wisdom.
Well, we have the elected Board of Assessment Appeals, that's usually, we have a provision to go for 5, but
Right.
it's really hard to get people to want to do that.
Right. All right. Anything else?
And I know we faced this before, this is a different kind of question, procedural. When one of the selectmen is gone, who nominates or how do we fill the third?
I was just looking.
I know.
I was gonna look at that myself.
When Ed Hebrecht was there, and he left, and it was Lee McAnally and someone else. Yeah, and I don't know who, was it just a board of two at that point?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Is that
remember?
state statute, or is it our charter that drives
The
that?
charter will drive it.
Okay.
I thought there was a provision in there.
Oh, well, no,
There was a
no.
provision.
Actually, vacancies in the Board of Selectmen shall be filled in the manner prescribed in the general statutes.
Okay, so it's.
I'll look at that.
Hopefully
I don't
that's
know.
right.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah,
The
sounds
general
like,
statute says handled by town
Yeah,
charter.
it's.
probably, yeah, probably does. We should probably look and see what that is,
You know, that's
actually.
something that we haven't had to
It's
think
probably a
about in a
special
long
election.
time, yeah.
It's probably
I
a
think it
special-
had to do with the parties, and did the town clerk get involved with that too? I can't
Yeah.
My
remember.
memory of that is pretty vague. I thought it was that
I think there was the
elected
parties.
officials in town voted on a replacement. And then the reason I remember it is who was an elected official, were
Right.
constables elected officials.
Right.
I was Board of Finance at the time, because it wasn't really a competitive
why they
election,
wanted to
we were
keep
like, no, you're not,
constables.
you don't count.
Yeah.
You count
That's what
for
happened in
money, but you
Fairfield,
don't count.
but I don't know whether that was charter-based or statutory-based, but
I don't either.
I'll take a look at that,
We should probably
because
look at
that is something that you should have a local, in my view, your vacancy you should have a local process that everybody's comfortable, how that works, et cetera. I think that that's something that should be looked at. You don't have to, what a lot of people forget from time to time is they take a look at the way Title VII is the Home Rule Act. And you operate under a very small part of Title VII, it's the municipal powers. And you could do almost anything under the municipal powers that you have to do as a local government. But there's a lot of provisions in there. If you live in Essex and you don't have a charter, then you have to live with what they call the town statutes. I call them the default statutes. So if you don't have a charter, you default to what the state says you can do. So you can set up a library board the way the statute says, no other way. Here you can set it up any way you want to, basically. Same thing with the police commission and a fire commission and boards of finance and stuff like that. you have a lot of flexibility to create your boards the way you want to in your local government, the way you do your budget process, your planning and zoning, and all that kind of stuff. But very often I get people say, well, this is the way it is. I said, if you don't have a charter, that's the way it is. Now, if you want a model for a way that works and a lot of people use it. There's nothing to say you can't model it on those default statutes, but those don't govern you. And so, so my view is where you can come up with an understanding and a process for replacing people, you should come up with your local process that you're comfortable with. And try to come up with a simple method for avoiding the gridlock, which you're going to face. That's another problem in a three-member body. Now, in a five-member body, you could have the same problem. It could be a 2-2 vote depending on how the parties split out. So if you lose your majority, then you have a 2-2 vote. If you're dealing with conventional parties, I know you guys have had nonpartisan candidates elected, but in the conventional situation, we have Ds and Rs. You could end up in a log jam, even in a five-member body or seven-member body.
Well, you can certainly do it, but it would seem that it would be less likely.
I think that's right. I think that's right. So I'll take a look at that statute. It's not something we've been looking at, and I'll take a look at the vacancy provision.
Our discussion has been, boy, three is very efficient, but we've raised some good, we've had a good discussion tonight, really had, you know?
I think one other area too that I would think if you're a candidate you'd be thinking about is our fire departments that are having such issues. And I know if you don't have a fire department, most of that would come back to the town and have a responsibility of either assuming them or maybe helping out. I know they're looking for a new chief in the borough, and it's hard to get volunteers to be able to come out. And we have like 5 firehouses. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 firehouses in town, which is a huge number. And how what the future may be of that, I don't know. You know, I know it's they work really hard, and the ones that are there are dedicated, but I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to hold on.
Well, whether that volunteer model is still viable.
It's usually, I mean, I did it for a decade as a volunteer, and a lot of the officers are now paid. And there's so much mutual aid, it's almost one department. I mean, it's not, it depends on where the fire is.
Mutual aid within the town between the different.
Yeah, I mean, you show up and.
Yeah. I don't know how mutual aid works across state lines. I don't think it does technically, because you don't have a large city around. One of the models I've talked about in other parts of the state, where you have the spoke of the wheels kind of concept, where most of the big cities have suburban areas with volunteer fire departments, and the big cities have fire departments that are twice as large as they need to be, is that the city should think about selling their services or renting their services out to the smaller towns, because they're having more of a problem with volunteer departments. But your closest city is New London. That's a little impractical to depend on their services. Westerly is another state, so I'm not sure if Westerly were in Connecticut, you'd have mutual aid with Westerly, but I don't know how that would.
Yeah, from the Board of Finance perspective, and because they service a lot of Pawcatuck.
Yeah.
So I've forgotten the percentage of what we give, but as a town, but we do.
I think the dispatch center is there.
Yes.
In where?
You're absolutely right.
In Westerly?
Yeah,
So it actually, so there
they
is.
do support.
So you have support systems,
And also
interesting.
the funny thing that I didn't realize, I was a liaison for a short time with the ambulance, there's a state mandate that you have to respond by a certain time. And that depending on, which makes sense, but it also makes it very difficult. I know like the borough is not, the borough ambulance is not manned at night. So that if it's, you have to come from, I think it's Old Mystic, they're the ones that are manned at night, which I thought was interesting, but also the state requires a lot of this to be done in a very efficient way, but that taxes more people
Yeah.
to get it done.
The fire departments in this area in Connecticut in general are archaic. They were established a long time ago, like Hoxie created that fire department to protect the hotel there. That was his investment. And
Interesting.
ironically, and I dealt with this in Groton because we had more fire apparatus in the city of New Haven. Stonington's got more fire
Yeah, a lot of
apparatus
rolling stuff.
than Providence. ideally, and I was talking to one of the chiefs today, who will also be leaving soon, eventually, economically, it's gonna come down to make one Stonington Fire Department, and then just have the different substations. But these people will hold on to their little fiefdom, and that's a losing battle for now when you bring it up. We've done it with Groton, Groton Long Point, Groton City. There's this duplication of effort. Not so much in Stonington with fire departments, but if it's public works, police, and that's big budget items, that's big money. And Stonington's really no different as far as the fire department. It's not about you can save money on equipment, training, and they do argue over mutual aid. This is my call, this is my call, this is my ramp, don't come here.
It's archaic but territorial.
It's colloquial.
Yeah.
That's how New England's set up. I mean, that's just the nature of our state. You go down south, everything's run by counties.
And it's not just small towns. West Haven has
Correct.
multiple, and it's a real drain in that city.
Well, you have West Haven, East Haven.
East
I mean,
Haven,
you might as well
yeah.
get all the cardinal
Middletown,
points of the compass.
Middletown has multiple, they have one central department, and they have two volunteer departments, basically.
Well, if you dispatch, if you're on the Cow Hill, Old Mystic, it could be Groton Fire Alarm, it could be Westerly dispatching. And then you get into a whole radio tower situation. Are we on a 900 band, or are we on an 800 band?
Oh, wow.
Can you hear me?
So you don't even have interoperability, you know.
Not a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why they have the numbers on the trucks. The trucks represent a certain type, the numbers represent a certain type of truck. So you know,
Yeah.
if someone says, oh, the 62 truck from Old Mystic's here, the guy in Quambog
Yeah.
is gonna know that.
I was just having this, literally having this conversation with somebody the other day that I represent New Haven, and I was an alderman in New Haven, the Corp Council in New Haven, so it's the city I know the best of all the places I represent. And their department's twice as large as it needs to be. You don't have fires, you just don't need it. And
Well, they do a lot more than fires, but yeah, you're
well,
correct.
there's, early response and all that, but I've recommended cross training to have them do building inspections and health inspections, and have them do a variety of things if you want to keep it large. And the other thing is sell the services and move all of your departments to closer to the highways, to 91, to 95, to 15, so that you can service other communities within a very short period of time, and just become a little more entrepreneurial with the service. And New Haven, but New Haven has collective bargaining agreements that would have to be redone, but that's probably easier than breaking down the historic divide you
Along
have
to
with
their
the
history.
territoriality.
You know, and ultimately, we'll see if the new tax, that abatement helps, but it's recruitment and retention. And it's not just that in the fire department, it's that in the police department. They just have physical agility where 4 cops go to administer it, right? No one showed up to take the test. No one. They can't hire anyone. Groton Town's the same way. They're gonna get jammed up. So you bring 4 police officers to do an agility test at time and a half, 4-hour minimum, that's 16 hours. They're there for 5 minutes, they gotta go. There's no one there. It's difficult to recruit people into public service. Ambulance personnel the same way. And we do have a somewhat aging population here too, so their services will be needed more.
I resemble that remark.
Well, I'm 60, but I look 70, but I feel 80, so I cover all 3 bases here, William. I give you the plug for that, buddy.
No, you're right.
I said I'm not as great a campaign manager.
All right. Okay, so anything else? Like I said, I really appreciate this, and I've tried to wrap this up a couple of times.
Unsuccessfully.
Yeah, I know, but you want to keep on talking.
Politicians
Yeah, you want to keep on talking, it's okay by me. Listen, it said we've been here for an hour, so it's a proper time to adjourn. And before we adjourn, I just want to know what the commission members' feeling is about when the next meeting should be. Should we meet in October, or should we wait till November?
I would prefer we meet in October to talk about some of the new issues that have been raised.
Exactly.
Very good.
I was
Then
gonna say the same
the fourth, let's see. September, October,
We can do 23rd.
October 20, October 10, 20,
Sorry?
October 23, 10/23, next meeting.
Steve, are you free?
Yeah, it's in my book already.
Okay.
Very good.
You're my only charter right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
We're special.
you got my full attention.